All right, so for tonight's reading, I've picked my Doctor Who jersey, which has the Doctor on the back and number 12 because Peter Capaldi's my favorite of the Doctors. If Yvonne had one, it'd probably be number 9 because she likes Chris Eccleston.
Yes, he's
So
my favorite.
there you go.
He is.
Anyways, we are going to dive back in. We're about a third of the way through this book, and that's the first part, the first volume of the 3 volumes. And then, if at the end of the first volume people still want to see more, then I will continue into volume 2. If by the other chance people are like, no, that's enough of that crap,
Then keep your
understood.
mouth shut and don't
And,
say anything.
and
Thank you.
I'll try to track down
Much
Run.
appreciated.
Run's around here somewhere,
Yes.
and I'll read
I
Run
know
instead.
I have it somewhere. I know it's with my books.
Yeah.
I either have it with my books upstairs or I might have put it on my bookshelf down here.
All right.
I know I have though.
So let's jump into this, and we're back to John, who we last saw beating up a drunk Dan.
Oh yeah.
John's eyes open slowly. The ceiling above him is not his own. The taste in his mouth is of filet mignon, tequila, and vomit. His stomach growls loudly as he focuses his vision on the ceiling. He realizes his arm is around someone, and he really hopes it's a woman. He slowly rolls towards the body his arm is under and finds Carissa there, a drool running down her chin as she snores in his direction. She doesn't move or even flinch as he pulls her hair back from her eyes. John then grabs the pillow from under his head, and he slowly draws his arm out from under Carissa, placing his pillow where his body had been as he slithers his way off the bed. He slowly gets to his feet, shaking his right arm to get feeling back into it. Apparently, he'd been lodged around Chris's side for some time, likely the whole night. Judging by the pink clothing nearby and the makeup sitting on the dresser, this is likely her place. It's not the worst place he's woken up after having a few drinks. He grabs his handheld mirror and looks at his hair. He's a mess and sticks out like a sore thumb in such a well-managed room. John quietly makes his way to the bathroom, shuts the door for privacy, as his bladder wakes up and lets him know it's full. In fact, that's likely what woke him up in the first place, as he still feels pretty tired and figures it has to be early. Once his bladder's relieved, he looks at himself again in the bathroom mirror this time. He runs some cold water over his hands, slicks his hair back. That helps him look a little more human. As he goes through a quiet morning routine, he wonders how he got here. He remembers the fight. He knows he made Dan look bad in front of a large group of people, and he'd have to watch his back now. Men like Dan don't take humiliation well, so there will likely be some retribution sought by the man who lost in their confrontation so badly. That's where the memory stops, though, and he blames the tequila for this. It's always been evil for him, and he wonders why he'd order it. Even if it had been Carissa's drink of choice, he should have known better for himself by now. He's glad he has his pants on. His shirt was on the floor, but his pants were on, which meant it wasn't likely anything sexual he's forgotten. If there was, he'd be completely against his code of conduct. A gentleman never takes advantage of a woman while she's drunk, even if he's more drunk than she is.
Absolutely.
See? Even my characters in the books. See? He doesn't like the idea of awkwardness with her, so this isn't all bad. He does worry she might panic when she wakes up and finds him there. There's a good chance she doesn't remember any more of the night than he does. She might remember even less. He hopes she remembers more, since he'd like to have more information as to what exactly happened that led to them sleeping next to one another. He grabs a bottle of mouthwash from the bathroom counter and chugs a mouthful to slosh around in his mouth and hopefully kill the taste he has left over from the night before. He spits it into the sink and washes it away before he then creeps back into the bedroom. At least he looks and smells human now. He's not a vain man, but he likes to maintain his appearance as best he can. Outside her bedroom window, John sees the sun slowly passing by. Goes to the window and looks out at the sun. He then looks at something he spots out of the corner of his eye. There's a shuttle docked with section B. He can see that it's a few levels above Carissa's quarters. This is highly unusual in that it's not a civilian shuttle. It's meant to look like one, but there are numbers on the side of it which are meant to let air traffic control know its security clearance. Their shuttle has a high level of clearance, and that piques John's interest. Last night had been a mistake, and John knew it. He wasn't thinking straight. He could not risk putting her in the crosshairs any more than she already has. John knew something was wrong here, and that's why he drank. He wanted to forget, and now he'd forgotten. Also, he had dropped his guard, and that could prove to be fatal. John has a job to do here, and he could not afford any entanglements that would take his eyes off what needs to be done. Lives depend on it. picks his shirt up off the floor and puts it on, buttoning the black dress shirt to his collar and tucking it into his gray pants. Makes certain it's even, doesn't look wrinkled, before he again looks out at the shuttle and lets his mind wander as to who might have flown it here and why. He'd have to set his headache aside and do a little investigating. John looks for his shoes, finds them near the door to her quarters. The door beeps as he gets close to it, and he winces at the sound. Both hurts his head and makes noise which could awaken last night's date. Sure enough, she stirs and looks in his direction. Her eyes widen. She sits up, clutching a blanket to her chest. She then pulls the blanket out and looks down. I'm dressed. I don't think we did anything, John says. She looks confused. Well, how did we get here? Last thing I remember, I was taking Dan's man card away and headed out with you. I have no idea what happened from there, but it doesn't look like we had sex, he assures her. She scratches her head. Not that I'm easy or anything, but you could try not to sound happy about that. At least let me think I could have wrapped you around my little finger. Did you sleep next to me? He nods. But we didn't. Her voice trails off. He shakes his head. Like I said, I don't think so. Drunk or not, I can usually tell if I've tripped a light fantastic. I did have a nice time, though. And now you're running off, she asks, apparently wounded that he would leave the morning after without saying goodbye. I hope we're not an item. I know we're not an item or anything, but you could at least show some courtesy. You make me feel cheap if you run off, you know. He sighs. I'm not running off. Well, not exactly. Here we go, she says, rolling her eyes. John looks down at the floor. He's searching for the right words to say here, but there doesn't seem to be anything suitable. There isn't a lie that comes to his hungover mind that will truly make her feel better about this. I'm a member of Secret Ops, he admits. I knew it, she said, and straightens up. She jumps out of bed, apparently not self-conscious thanks to this revealing truth. She's wearing a white tank top and black shorts anyways, but she's not as tense as she was before. She fights the urge to hug John for proving her right. She also feels nauseous due to her sudden movement. I'm here because there's been concerns regarding arcology populations. Arcology 443 was in the anarchy stage of things last I heard, but I believe everyone there was exterminated. That's the rumor anyways. It's the belief of certain people there is some new form of biological warfare in play here. I'm not supposed to be telling you any of this, and I could be fired if anything got out, he says, looking her straight in the eyes for the first time since they met. She places her hand over her heart. I swear, this stays between us. So what's going on this morning that made you tell me this? So there is a shuttle docked at Section B, and the markings on it indicate someone from Special Ops is here as well. If so, that would indicate to me that my instincts regarding the actions of Hector Cruz were true. The man was turned into an animal, and there will be others who suffer the same fate if I can't get my crap together here and track our culprit down, or culprits. John explains while he looks towards the window. He then falls back against the wall and puts his hands over his face. I'm going to get fired. She shakes her head. No, you won't. Come on, John. You can walk me around the arcology. I have no problem being a cover for you. Besides, as a police officer, I want to know what's going on. See, since Ben named us cops, we've had to put up with a lot of crap from people. I want to show I deserve to wear a uniform. John pauses a moment to think it over. I get the feeling you won't take no for an answer. I never do, she says with a smile, grabs her uniform and heads to the bathroom to get dressed. Next scene. Mike is not getting the kind of help he'd expected. Andrew Jenkins is the second in command to Charles Woods, and he hasn't taken kindly to someone coming onto his arcology and demanding to know where Charles is. There's been no sign of Section A leader Sterling Bishop, and that seems more odd to Mike than apparently does to Andrew. Mike has been able to get as far as Andrew's office, and has only been allowed to talk with him, one-on-one, forcing Tanya and Catherine to wait outside while the discussion goes nowhere. How often does Charles stay out of touch for an entire night and not return to his quarters, Mike asks. I've explained this to you, Mr. Fergus, Andrew says in as firm of a tone as he can manage without losing his temper. Charles Woods is a busy man, and he often is out for meetings. Last I heard, last night, he was in the middle of a strategy session regarding Hector Cruz. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's a media circus out there. Charles Woods has a lot of work ahead of him, and he doesn't need to be answering questions from some federal agent. Mike wags a finger at Andrew. I've explained this to you, Jenkins. I'm not a federal agent. I'm a man connected to some powerful people, and I need to discuss things with him. I believe that this level 53, is the home to something that could eventually destroy this arcology. It is my task to try and prevent a disaster from happening. I'm overtired, not in the mood to argue with a paper pusher when things are going to get much worse out there unless we work together to stop it. Andrew smirks, but that doesn't mean he's amused. Any man could come in here and make a claim like that. I believe you're a reporter, and you're not getting your way through with wild claims about who or what you are. I wasn't born yesterday, Mike. I really like how you're talking down to me, Andrew. Please continue. As much as I'd love to continue, I have a lot of work on my plate. The press wants more information, and we have to decide what they do or do not need to know, Andrew says as he turns away from Mike. You know your way out, and I trust you'll return to your shuttle and head back to Earth. You're not needed here, Mr. Fergus. Mike stands there in shock for a moment. He's been as honest as he dares to be, and this man will not consider that things are not right here. This is one of the most stubborn people he's ever dealt with. He's dealt with more than his share of them. He does turn away and he heads out the door. He's confronted by Tanya and Catherine. Well, it went that badly? She asks, seeing the expression, knowing this won't be good news. They're on their own. Mike shrugs. I don't understand why these places have to hire people who are ignorant, stupid, stubborn, or all the above. Turns out this prick's all the above. I swear, the entire place could be on fire and he still wouldn't notice. Something catches Catherine's eye, and suddenly she leaves Mike and Tanya behind. She follows a man in the crowd, but Tanya and Mike are soon following her without asking what she's doing. Catherine isn't sure why she's following this young man until she realizes he's carrying a gun. It's an old gun, the type that fires old-fashioned yet deadly bullets. It's not as lethal as the laser guns police officers here carry, but it does the job, and this is especially true if it's fired from close range. The man is sweating profusely. He keeps looking around him, but no one in the crowd seems to notice his erratic behavior. He even looks at security cameras and tries to duck down on his way past them. That won't hide him, but it's clearly more of a symbolic gesture than for any actual effect. He doesn't appear to be headed for a movie theater or out for supper. That said, he's headed into the food court, and that causes Catherine to pick up the pace. Mike spots the gun, and he actually moves faster than Catherine, getting in between her and the gunman quickly and quietly. Mike also looks around the room to see any possible targets. He knows this isn't likely to end peacefully. This is the kind of thing he feared he would find when he got here. He hears music in the food court as they head into the heart of the commercial hub. Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones is playing without a hint of irony in its tone. Mike actually sees people toe-tapping to this classic from centuries ago. The reason I had that being played in that scene is because that was the song that I used to inspire me to get into the mood to write. So I would use Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones, No More Tears by Ozzy Osbourne, and Black by Pearl Jam. Those were the three that I would listen to, and then I'd be right in the writing mood. So there you go. A little bit of an Easter egg there. The man stops in the center of the food court and then finds the one table that no one's sitting at. Climbs up atop the table, raises the gun, and fires it in the air. All motion in the room ceases. Conversations halt, and every eye turns to face the crazed gunman. Your attention, please, the madman begins. I've come here today to tell you a horrible truth. Aliens walk among us. He knows, Mike mutters, and Catherine's head turns to look upon him with confusion. I was abducted last night by a being named Thuru, a being who scanned my brain and then told me we've all been infiltrated by his kind. Thuru told me I would know them all by sight. Thuru told me I was the only one who could stop the spread of their kind. They mean to breed with us, breed with our women and destroy us from within. Mike knows now this man is off. But this hallucination has some truth at its heart. He wonders if they did this on purpose, if they're being cocky now. At this late stage of the game, have they become so arrogant that they would bring themselves to the brink of revealing the endgame to the animals they mean to destroy? Thuru assured me I can see through the skin of those hiding among us as humans. Now, with the only gun in my hand that could actually kill these creatures, I will cleanse the room. The crazed man lowers his gun at the crowd. Many gasp or scream, but the man has his back to Mike, Catherine, and Tanya. It's actually Tanya who fires first and hits the man square in the back with a tranquilizer shot that brings him to his knees. The gun fires, but is pointed down and hits the floor instead of hitting one of its intended targets. He falls forward to the floor, face first, and snoring as he falls. Mike then quickly moves in and ties the man's hands behind his back with a length of wire he has in his pocket, just for this kind of unfortunate occasion. Kind of like a MacGyver thing. You just never know if you're going to need something. As Mike stands the out-cold man up and starts to drag him from the room, Kristen Byrne heads him off. I have to have a chat with you, she says sternly. Mike hands off the out-cold prisoner immediately. I was just coming to visit you when my partner noticed this guy. There are a lot of ticking time bombs in this arcology, Captain. We don't have a lot of time. John manages to make his way to the level where the shuttle's been docked. He looks around and finds no one's watching the door. He then opens it and heads into the shuttle with a nervous Carissa at his side. He looks over at her and smiles. No worries, I'm allowed to do this. Are you sure? She asks, looking back and half expecting to find someone charging at them with a gun drawn, shooting to kill. There's no sign that anyone is about to do that, but her nerves don't settle down in the slightest. John goes to the navigation system and starts punching in access codes. He calls up where the shuttle's been, and it causes him to do a double take. Can't be, he says, and now he's looking nervously out the door and expecting someone to come in running as well. Okay, you're freaking me out. What can't be? She asks. This shuttle belongs to an agent named Mike Ferguson. He was just at Arcology 443. New Orleans. One and the same. Mike's something of a legend, he says with a smirk. And you're not? She asks with a chuckle. John shakes his head. Mike's a man who has the ability to see things no one else does. If there's a clue as to what happened at the scene of anything, he'll find it. I don't know how the hell he knows all the stuff he does. It's likely the guy has no life. That's my guess anyways. His memory of trivial data is what makes him so damn good. If he was here, then you and I have to find him. This is somebody we would be very fortunate to work with. Carissa looks around as she now waits for a hero to emerge from the sea of humanity, though there's no one heading towards the door to the shuttle. No one even seems curious that the airlock door has been open for so long. It's usually opened very briefly as pilots enter or exit, and not left open longer than that. Where do you think he was headed? John's jaw drops. According to the ship's data, Mike was on level 53 when there was a shootout on Arcology 443. He also found one survivor, John says, and his heart sinks. He actually slumps into the chair behind him and his hands tremble. One? Carissa asks, knowing full well how many people live on Arcologies. There were almost 500,000 people on that one. More than we have on this one, John says, shaking his head. If whatever happened there killed nearly all of them, and one of the survivors had to be shot by Mike, we're in grave danger here. It's worse than I thought. Well, that's comforting, Carissa says, trying really hard not to get down about this. The idea of a giant coffin floating around in space makes her sick to her stomach, but she doesn't have time for that right now. This is when she has to prove herself as an officer of the law. People are going to need her to be strong on a level she's never envisioned before coming here. She was going to be a model, a secretary, or maybe a nurse. This wasn't what she had planned, but again, she didn't have time to worry about that or get down on herself about life. John continues scrolling through data at an alarmingly fast rate. Apparently Mike brought the survivor here. He pauses and looks at Carissa. If it's a virus causing this to happen, she might be a carrier. He could be making things worse. But if she doesn't show any outward symptoms, maybe she's immune to it. Or she's a carrier, which could mean not showing symptoms. I wrote this 10 years ago. I again want to say I wrote this a long time ago. This is not anything to do with current events. There's little that we know. This is really reckless for Mike. Come on, we have to track him down. We might as well start on level 53, John says as he grabs Carissa by the hand and leads her out of the shuttle. Closes the door behind them and then applies a security lock with a combination only he knows. This way, Mike has to contact him before he'll be able to leave. See? John outsmarted Mike on that one. They head to the nearest elevator and John's a little short of breath as they reach it. It's more stress than physical exhaustion. He takes a few deep breaths as he chooses level 53 and then leans back against the wall of the elevator while it starts to climb towards the place where the illness apparently begins. As the elevator makes its way up, John thinks about level 53 and its importance to Arcologies. It's the level which always houses VIP passengers and the Arcology leader as well. Perhaps the perception that the powers that be are out of control makes it easier to turn the rest of the ship into a raving madhouse. It'd also be the matter of taking out the strongest people first. Carissa, meanwhile, has a sweaty hand on her gun. She's trying not to look obvious about it, but she's freaked out. When she accepted this job, it was seen as slack, an easy paycheck. It was not a job she would have accepted while on Earth due to the inherent danger involved. Now, not long after accepting this job from Ben Wood, she's wondering what she's got herself into. She didn't know if she could fire her gun and actually aim well when called upon. Didn't seem like a big deal when she'd accepted it as her job, but now it was at the forefront of her mind. They bolt from the elevator as soon as the door opens, and some passers-by gasp when they see that Carissa's drawn her gun and has it pointed straight ahead. There are children in the area, so parents hide their kids and reporters turn to face John and Carissa. John lowers her gun. Not the way to make an entrance, sweetie. She nods. I just don't know what to expect. There's so much that... Her voice trails off as they pass by a boardroom. She sees light under the door. That's odd, she says, and stops in her tracks. What? That's a boardroom, right? He asks, not seeing anything out of place. She nods. Charles Woods never leaves the lights on. He's also never up at this time of day, and no one has access to the boardroom. That light should not be on. And how do you know all that? She shrugs. Life can be pretty boring, and I learn a lot of stuff as I pass time, I guess. I've had meetings in the boardroom, and Charles always insists on the lights being turned off when the meeting's over. He really is anal about that kind of thing. John nods and goes to the door, then finds it to be locked. He takes a deep breath and considers whether or not it's a good time to try this, as it will blow his cover completely if there is any board meeting going on in there. Coffee vendor won't know the security code to open every door in this arcology. No matter how thick Charles Woods might be, even he'll know that. John looks around, finds no one's watching him, so he proceeds to open the door. Carissa screams. Next scene. The crazed gunman, disarmed and out cold, is in a holding cell while Officer Nicky Randall stands and watches him sleep. The cell is the standard steel barred variety, not the modern version with lasers or force fields in place of bars. It was a cost-cutting move, and cells in arcologies were so rarely used they could not justify the expense. Now it seemed so medieval to lock someone up in such an ancient structure aboard a ship, so very modern in almost every other way. To Nicky, it makes the prisoner seem like a throwback to the more violent past the Earth had. What happened to this guy, Nicky asks, although she didn't really expect an answer. I'm trying to run a medical diagnosis here, but this bloody thing isn't telling me anything's wrong with him, Mike says, frustrated as he goes through his data readouts. There should be something in here, at least an elevated heart rate, something here to explain the erratic behavior. An alarm sounds in the police station and Kristen slumps in her chair. This is bad, isn't it? She asks, looking at Mike. He nods. I have to know what's driving these people mad or we're screwed. You're going to wind up being quarantined and then there's nowhere to go. No way out, and we might even find the place set for demolition. I can't see it happening myself, but my boss could make that call. He's not known for thinking things through. Kristen picks up her gun and heads for the door with Nicky and Mike Fergus close behind. Tanya, Matt Davidson, and civilian Catherine are left to respond to any other calls, which might come in. Mike actually speeds up his pace so he's the first one out the door, and they make their way down the hallway towards the elevator. John's actually running as he reaches the boardroom. Mike's actually running. It's Mike that's doing the running. I put the wrong name in there. I apologize to everybody who's bought the book. It should say Mike. So on page 48, you can change John to Mike at the start of that paragraph. Mike's actually running as he reaches the boardroom and finds himself face to face with somebody he didn't figure he would see here. My God, John Webster, what the hell? Undercover work, John answers and points the gun at the dead body of Charles Woods. Looks like they bit the head off this place. Mike nods and heads over to the twisted body. He finds red marks around the throat of Charles Woods and sighs. This is just like what I found on 443. There were so many people who died this way, it appears to be self-inflicted. So many suicides on 443 then, something I really don't want to face. It's just so sinister on every level. What brought you here? John asks while the other people present just stand awaiting their turn to speak. They know they're out of their element. When I heard the news about Hector and the level he'd been found on, I knew that could not be a coincidence. There's just no way. I should have figured there would be a special ops guy here. As far as I knew, there weren't any on the older arcologies. I knew 443 didn't have one, Mike says. John nods and points to the marks on Charles' neck. I knew this man, Mike. He's not a suicidal type. I dealt with him a few times in my cover job. He was an idiot, but he wasn't violent and certainly wasn't the depressed type. Kristen now steps in, seeing her opening. I can attest to that. He blamed me for what happened with Cruz. In fact, he blamed everyone but himself. That's how he was with things like that. His whole life was about signing blame and getting ahead by making everyone else look bad while he looked brilliant. It's the only reason I can imagine him being assigned this job. Again, this is not a statement on anything happening currently or any kind of a political statement. This was written about a decade ago. I don't know why I have to keep... I feel like I need to make sure that I'm clarifying the publication date for this. Mike taps his foot on the floor, thinking as a medical team finally shows up. He looks at the clock on the wall. Is medical always this slow to respond? One medic gives Mike a dirty look. We've been busy with dead people today. We just had to deal with cleaning up Sterling Bishop's room. Kristen's eyes widen. We were never alerted. Not much to alert you to since he's dead as dead gets. His organs were cooked before he hit the floor, the second medic says, as they attend to the deceased Charles Woods. Cooked? Mike asks, looking over at Tanya. I need to see this body. Do you have clearance? The first medic asks. Mike produces a special ops ID. I imagine this clearance is enough for the morgue? Yes, sir, both medics say in stereo, and they seem stunned that someone from such a classified organization would be among them. Mike heads out with John, Tanya, and Kristen in tow. This investigation is getting closer to the horrifying truth, one of which none of them may be completely ready to face. Only Mike has a clue exactly what they're up against. That's the end of chapter 5. So we still don't know the villain exactly. It's not Thuru. I'm going to throw that out there right now. It was a stupid name I made up. I thought I'm just going to make a really dumb name for this crazy guy who... Yeah, so Mike kind of knows what's going on. Not exactly. He realizes who's behind it, and we'll find out in future chapters who's behind it. So there you go. I'm guessing Yvonne's bored of it by now, so she wants this to be the last installment.
Nope. I like you reading.
On this Friday night. And
Your books are fun, so.
Thank you. So there you go. You guys are all caught up for tonight. I'm all caught up on Big Brother now. I get to do my treadmill and get caught up on Legends of Tomorrow. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Legends of Tomorrow while you do your treadmill.
Yep. Because it's a fun show.
All right.
So.
Oh, my hair's all crazy.
Yeah.
Look at that. Wow.
It's all the partying we've been doing.
Right.
While we're all
been
locked away.
Cutting tons of fabric.
Yes.
I've got to have like 50 masks cut out by now.
Yep. Mask maker Yvonne. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. Do stay safe out there. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. We'll be back again tomorrow night. And of course, in between each of these, I've been making sure I have an entertainment guide video in between as well. So try to make sure there's 2 videos a day on this channel.
Okay.
So making sure there's content for people who might need a little bit of a distraction from everything everywhere around the globe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.